Okay, class. Today is finishing up one last thing about regions, and then we're going to do a little bit of review, and then we're going to give you some time to finish up some tasks that you need to have finished up before we have our big test Friday. So let me share screen, a map real quick. I want to talk to you a little bit about time zones. Let's see, let's do a couple different options, but let's do this one. Okay, this is one last different regional thing. Now, time zones confuse people all the time. Adults get confused by time zones all the time. And the first thing you might say is, why in the world do we have different time zones? Why, if it's not noon in Ohio, isn't noon everywhere? Well, there's a lot of different things involved with it. You don't have to know this, but originally it was kind of set by people that were running railroad lines. They wanted to be able to have a uniform time because different people had different time standards. But really, the whole idea is if we did that, if we said, you know what, the whole world, noon is noon, it would be dark in some places at noon. The sun would almost be down in some other places. It would just be coming up in some other places. At noon, the sun should be directly over your head. That's just kind of how we think of that. You know, the sun should be coming up at a certain time. And so we adjust that to make it so. So we, in the worldwide, you've got far more time zones, obviously. But we're going to stick to the continental United States. So at the time I'm recording this, it is 2:33 p.m. So it's 2:33 in Sandusky right now. We are in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. Now, Central Time Zone is an hour behind us. So you can see it is saying, ironically, it is saying 2:10 when it's 2:30. Okay. Oh, you know what? Let me refresh this website and then maybe it'll come back up. The right time. Yeah, that looks better. So it's 2:34 in the Eastern Standard Time Zone. What a silly thing to advertise. Central, we've got ourselves an hour earlier, and then Mountain 2 hours earlier, and then Pacific Standard Time 3 hours earlier. So that means that if you take something as simple as a phone call, that can really throw you off, because in the lecture the other day, I told you that my best friend growing up moved out to California, started talking with some weird California slang. The other thing he did when he moved out to California is he loved to call me about 11 o'clock at night. Now, as a teacher, I get up pretty early. I'm here by 7 a.m., and I've been like that for a long time. So I go to bed at like 10. I didn't love him calling me at 11, but worse, it was his 11 o'clock. So his 11 o'clock is 2 in the morning, Ohio time. So he'd call me at 2 in the morning. He'd be like, oh, the waves, they're so great. You know, what's going on? And I'd be like, what's going on is I have to go to work in 4 hours. I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. What are you doing? You've got to be mindful of this time zone thing. This time zone thing can really mess with you if you fly. Now, let's back this up. And I know this sounds really basic for some of you, but if you've never had the opportunity to fly, you're obviously going to go through several time zones. Now, if you drive, you do and possibly can go through time zones, but it's not as big of an adjustment, and I'll explain. Let's start off with this one. If you've ever flown from, say, Cleveland to Florida, we'll say Tampa, that's like a, I don't know, 2-hour flight, 2.5 hours tops, but it's all in the same time zone. So if I were to leave for a flight to Tampa at 2:30, and it were going to take me about 2.5 hours, I would get there at 5. My watch would say 5. The clock in the airport would say 5 o'clock. All of the restaurants in Tampa would be open at 5. Everything would be like normal for me because I didn't leave my time zone. Now, if I were to drive to Chicago, which I've done a few times, when you drive, there's a certain point in your drive where you go out of the time zone. So you kind of go back in time an hour and actually lose it going the other way. So how long does it take to drive to get to Chicago? Like 5 hours, maybe, depending on traffic, like 5.5, maybe 5:15, somewhere in there. But your watch is only, your cell phone will change times automatically when it goes in that new time zone. So you could think, if you weren't paying attention, that it only took 4 hours and 15 minutes. Really, you were spending 5. And then on the way back, your phone's going to switch back, and you're going to think it took you 6 hours. I wish I could see your faces to see. I know most of you get it, but I know there's some who don't, and that's fine. I'm not picking on you. It's a weird concept. Let me get weirder for you. So before the pandemic, the last time I had a chance to travel, I flew out west. So I left from Cleveland. I had a flight at 8 a.m. So my flight left Cleveland at 8 a.m. and went out all the way out west. So it was a 4.5-hour flight. So by my watch, literally wearing a watch on my wrist, I left at 8, got to California about, I don't know, 12:20, 12:30, something like that, 4.5 hours later. However, even though I was in the air for 4.5 hours and my watch confirmed that in Ohio time, it is 12:30-ish, my phone said it was 9:30 because they are 3 hours behind. Sometimes you hear this referred to as jet lag. So the problem is, and it's like this all day, I'm 3 hours off all day. So if you want to go out to lunch, in your mind it's 12:30, it's time for lunch. Nobody's open for lunch because it's 9:30 in California. And then that just keeps getting worse and worse all day. At like 9 o'clock, I'm exhausted. 9 p.m., I'm exhausted because in my head it's midnight. But to everybody else, it's just 9 p.m. And then going back, you lose that 3 hours. You leave, I think we left maybe closer to noon. So you fly at noon, and it takes till about 4:30 to get to Ohio, but you lose that 3.5 hours. So now it's 7:30 in Ohio. So that's a different, it's not really a regional difference, but it's a difference you will discover if you ever travel around the country, and you have to be aware of that. You may be in a business where you have to travel and make appointments at certain times, and you better make sure you are on the right time, Central Standard Time or whatever it is, Mountain Standard Time. But even things out west, like football games that are on at 1 o'clock, out west are on at 10 a.m. And that's why people out west don't watch as much football as people do on the East Coast, because it's a dumb time. That's why sometimes you'll have, right now at this exact moment in time, it looks like the Lakers are going to make the NBA Finals. So when they do, the time that they're going to want to tend to start a little bit more towards the evening, but they don't want to start too late in the evening. So they started at 9, which would be a very reasonable time to start. That wouldn't even air till midnight out here. So there's no way they'll do it at 9. They'll maybe push it till 6 or 7 out here because they don't want it to be much later than say 9 or so out on the East Coast, because they want to keep that in mind. Don't get too hung up on that. I just thought I would share that with you. So we've got a test. So this is just a few reminders. We've got a test coming up on Friday. So number one thing to remember, this test should not be that tough. If you've taken a few notes, we did not take many notes this unit. Most units, you're going to take like 8 pages of notes. You took 1.5 pages of notes tops for this particular unit. But this test, quiz, whatever you want to call it, is going to take place during your class period on Friday. Cannot emphasize that to you enough. It's going to be during your class period. Now, there'll be no live sessions required on Friday for those of you who normally would have live sessions, but I'll probably put up a live link so you can ask me questions. But what's going to happen is whatever period your class is supposed to meet as if we had real regular school, that's the period that that's the time I'm going to make your test available. So I've got a different test for first, a different one for third, a different one for fourth, and a different one for seventh. First period, your test, I'm going to schedule it in, and it's going to appear in the Google Classroom stream, just like I would do like a, Monday lesson, Tuesday lesson, Wednesday lesson. Friday's lesson is just going to say, take the test, you have till 8:45. It's just going to appear, and it's going to be a link you click on, just like the worksheet you did this week, just like the practice test you did before. The difference is, though, you must be done by the end of your class. So first period has to be done by, I think it's 8:45. The third period, you can go in at 8 o'clock. It's not going to be there. Third periods will not appear until right around 10. Now it's set on a timer. Don't panic. Sometimes the timer's off a minute or two, but it's going to appear at about 10 o'clock for third. And they have until 10:45 to get that done. If it's in past 10:45, I'm making the assumption that you're cheating, and it's not going to count. Fourth period, boy, off the top of my head, I don't even remember when fourth period means. Let me cheat. 11:15. So yours is going to appear at 11:15, and it's going to shut off at 12. It's not going to accept any more answers after 12. The seventh period, 2:15, and it's going to shut off at 3. It won't take any more. So I won't be there to physically go, okay, 2 more minutes. Okay, 1 more minute. You're going to have to be disciplined enough to end that and submit it before the end of your class, because if you don't submit it before the end of the class, it's not going to count. That said, this is a shorter test. This is a good way to practice this. This is not a typically, a typical test of mine. As a matter of fact, every other test you'll take this year We'll have 34 multiple choice questions, 2 short answers, which would require about 2 sentences each, and 1 extended response, which would require about 4 sentences. That's just like the test, the pre-test you took at the beginning of the year. But this is a small unit. This is just like basic stuff. So this is going to only be 18 multiple choice, 1 short answer, and 1 extended response. So it's only going to take you half as long to do this. So that'll get you in good practice to make sure that you know what you're doing. There'll be a little bit less pressure. I would think that most of you will be done in like 20 minutes or something. That's it. And then I will grade it over the weekend, and we will review it in our live sessions either Monday or, depending on when your live session is, Tuesday. We'll review those results, and they'll be in the grade book at some point over the weekend, I should hope, if not Monday morning. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to share with you some of the screens, some of the few notes that we have. And I did not share screen there. I just went right to it. Okay. Let's see if this works. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, well, what will be on this test? Well, first off, a lot of the stuff we did was just sort of basic introduction. How are you? This is how the class works. Here's how we're going to do some basic stuff. But let me go through some of our first pages of notes. Nope, you don't need that. You don't need that. You know, these are good hints. You know how to write out questions. These are all good things, but here we go. The first things that would be fair game and a good place to always start for every unit. Again, this is a good practice unit. Most units are going to have way more words, but you should look at these words. You took these last week in your notes and you say, do I know what market, command, mixed, traditional, tariff, bias, primary, and secondary are? If you don't, say you can remember all but mixed and tariff, then you look those up in your notes. You know, maybe you highlight them, maybe you circle them. Everybody studies a little bit different. This is a good place to start. Do I know these basic terms? The pages of notes themselves, there's only really one solid page of notes. And it's this solid page of notes here. And again, on a test, there would normally be like 8 pages of notes. But you have to know your 4 economic systems: market, command, mixed, traditional. And just like the formative review we did one day, you know, I might describe a system and say, okay, in this country, the government tells you exactly what to make and when to make it. What is that? Command. How we regulate the economy. Tariffs. They're taxes on foreign goods. How it can help keep American jobs by putting a tax on, say, a Japanese car maker. But if there's no American competition for a product, then we just take that tax off because we want that, whatever it is, that product, that banana, or whatever it is, to cost less. And we talked a little bit about interest rates, and we're going to come back to this over and over again this year. But interest is the money they charge to let you have the privilege of borrowing money. No bank lets you borrow money because they like you. They don't like us or care about us. They do it to make money, no matter what they say in their commercials. All right. And then the most important thing that we're probably going to review virtually every week by virtue of doing our writing is that we have these, I call them source basics. And I call them that because you are going to be sourcing all of these different writing assignments every single week. I'm either going to give you a source, some sort of, say, the Declaration of Independence or Janelle Collette's analysis of Jane Addams' letter, and you have to tell me, oh, I think that source is primary, meaning I think that's original to the time, or I think it's secondary. Somebody removed is telling me about that. And you're going to do that every time this year. I'm going to ballpark it at, we have 37 weeks of school. So 18 times I'm probably going to give you some document. Once a week, I'm going to give you a document that says it's primary or secondary. Give me your opinion and your summary and all of that. Now, the other times, we're going to be talking about whether things are biased or unbiased. So those times like this week when I say, oh, find a news story, tell me about that news story, and tell me, is it biased or unbiased? I'm going to give you a hint right now. I would say 90% of the stories you are going to find are probably unbiased. And your explanation is really simple. The story is unbiased or reliable. I don't care which one you say, because they just reported the facts. That's what 90% of you are going to write, and you're going to be right most of the time. Now, sometimes there might be a story that has a lot of opinion in it. If you have that story, then you say, oh, this is not as reliable, or this is biased, either one, because this has opinion. A lot of times I really like those stories because they're nice. It might be about like, oh, this person was recognized because he did all of these great things for charity. Now, it's unbiased to say, oh, this person dedicated 1,000 hours and this person raised this much money. But invariably in those stories, And I don't disagree, but they'll say things like, he's such a nice guy, he's so giving, he's changed so many lives, everybody loves him. Listen, that's all great, and they should. But what you would say in that story is, it's mostly reliable, but there was a lot of bias talk about how everybody likes him. That's all. You're just saying you can't really prove some of these statements. But again, if you tell me, oh, there was a car accident in downtown Sandusky, a car ran through a building and hurt 2 people and knocked down a building, and they report that, maybe they even report the driver and what he got cited for. That's reliable. They just reported the facts. That's it. Straightforward stuff. But you might have to identify that. Ooh, I did not mean to do that. You might have to identify this sort of thing in documents I give you on a test. The other thing you're going to have to do in the test is just utilize some skills that I was trying to get you to work on through some of the assignments I gave you. And that might be just reading charts or graphs. Now, I might give you, when we talk about charts or graphs, I did forget to tell you about this. But when I give you charts, I'll come back to that. When I give you charts or graphs, it doesn't have to be over something we've covered before, because I'm testing whether or not you can read a chart or graph properly. So you go, oh, I've never seen this before. But I can ask you questions about it, and just by you being a competent person looking at a chart, you could tell me, oh, in 2014, if you didn't have a high school diploma, how much money did you make on an average per week? Oh, $488. Oh, how likely, what was the percentage of unemployment? Oh, 9%. Okay. Now, if you had a master's degree, how much did you make on average per week? Oh, 1,326. You can just look at the chart and see the data that we're asking for. And by the way, these are averages. So, invariably I'll show something like this and someone will say, well, my friend doesn't have his, this person I know, my aunt, whatever, only has a high school diploma, but makes way more than this. Awesome. Somebody's got to beat the average. There's also some doctor that's unemployed and not making any money. That's okay. We're talking about averages. When we talk about averages, this was the income. And actually, professional degree made more than a doctoral degree. Okay, good enough. And that talks about the unemployment rate up there on the side. It's just, can you read that data? A totally different one. Can you read this chart about murder rates? You don't know what the murder rates are in the United States, but if I give you this chart and I say, is it safer to live in Louisiana or Ohio? And you go, oh man, Louisiana, boy, that has about the highest murder rate in the whole country per 100,000 people. Ohio is not great, but it's better than that. I'd rather live there. Is it safer to live in Washington or Oregon, or say Florida? Oh, it's way safer to live over here. There's way less murders per 100,000 people. That's the sort of thing that I'm having you assess when you look at these sort of charts. And again, I'm going to throw some chart at you that you've not seen before. You're going to do fine, because all you have to do is read that chart. All right, so that's that first skill. Charts and graphs are often used as documents or information to analyze time periods. You have to know how to read those. Major theme throughout most of the year is that our nation has increased in urbanization. Man, our country, especially from where we pick up, 1877 on, has grown more and more urban. Again, you look at our population in 1860, 25 million people lived in rural areas, 6 million lived in urban areas. Both of these numbers increase because our population grows. We have more and more people in it. But even by 1920, more people lived in urban areas. And today, according to this chart here, it's like 80% of Americans by 2010 lived in an urban area. And again, they give you this sort of map. And again, could you read this sort of map? If it was especially a little fuzzy on this one, but could you say, where are the most rural areas? Well, they're in that western, midwestern area out here. The coast, they're pretty heavily populated. I didn't show you this one yet, but this gives you a pretty good idea too of some other things. If we think about ancient societies, you might have heard about hunters and gatherers in maybe some of your junior high or elementary classes. Hunters and gatherers actually had very little impact on the environment, because they just took the resources they need. They might hunt and gather what they need, and that's it. You can hardly tell they were there. Farming society, on the other hand, has a huge impact on the environment because they cut down all the trees to make farmland. Man, which one has the most? Urban areas today, cities and suburbs, because we cut down all the trees and pour a lot of concrete for roads and for bridges and for houses and apartments and buildings and, skyscrapers, that has a huge impact on the environment. This is a chart saying the exact same thing. So those are some common trends that we talk about, that there's more urbanization, and that's going to show up in the test. I'm going to ask you in some way for this quiz on Friday, have we grown more urban or more rural or something along those lines? We already talked about documents of the week and those challenges, primary or secondary, biased or unbiased, or reliable or unreliable, same difference. And then a little bit about regions. I told you a little bit yesterday about regions, and I might ask a question on the test like, oh, what are some differences that, vary from region to region? It might be language. It might be, in particular with slang. It might be what sports are popular. It might even be how likely you are to be a Democrat or a Republican. It might be what sport is more popular in that area. There's just a lot of things that make us a little bit unique from region to region. We are not monolithic. We are not all the same. We have a lot of things we share in common, but we are, a nation that has a lot of diversity. So that's a quick review of everything. There's not tons to do today or tomorrow. I'm telling you to get ready, get your notes organized. Let's be honest. If you were in my classroom, I wouldn't be letting you use your notes, but I really don't have any particular way to stop you other than I'm going to make sure you can't use them all day. That's why the test isn't going to be posted in all classes all day. But if you're organized and you have your notes out at home and the test is running from 8 until 8:45, even with that deadline, you're going to have time to look through your notes for those last few things. I can't stop that. I can live with that because I really don't have a choice. But if you don't have any notes because you didn't watch those lectures, or you're not, you don't realize you're taking the test until 20 minutes into it, and that's on you. So take advantage of this, what should be an easy grade, knock it out of the park, and get that document of the week done as well. Those are easy. You have all week to do them. But I want you to earn a passing grade. I want that more than anything, but I'm not handing out grades. You got to earn them, okay? You got to do some things for them. So message me with any questions, and hope everybody has a great day and is ready for that test on Friday and gets all of their work in. See you guys.